Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Angelina. I am 23 years old and a recent college grad and just started this channel recently. And today I am coming to you with a sit-down video, which this is the first sit-down video I've ever done on this channel, so it definitely feels a little bit weird. My first two videos before this are both vlogs, so this feels a little weird. This is also like the third time I filmed this because it's weird just sitting and like talking straight to the camera like this in such a formal way. But anyway, I'm here today with a fun little book video. I've got, oh my god, got all my books right here. But basically I am going to be going over all of the books that I've read so far this year. I believe there are 9 of them. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, there are 9 of them. And I'm going to be going over all of them and giving kind of a brief synopsis and sharing my thoughts and then saying if I'd recommend them or not and then saying how many stars I gave it. So I'm so excited to do this video. I'm a huge reader. I've loved reading literally my entire life and I love any excuse to talk about books. So I knew I wanted to film one of these videos for the channel. So hi, welcome, and let's get into it. So we're starting off strong here. The very first book I read this year is the one and only, very popular, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This book has been all over TikTok, all over Instagram, all over literally any other social media platform. I feel like everyone and their mom has read this book or at least heard of it. And I did not read it until January. I had not read this book until January. I don't know why. I'd heard about it for so long, but just never read it. But then finally I was like, you know what, I'm gonna read it. It sounds interesting. And boy, am I glad that I did. I don't know why I waited so long to read this. It very quickly became one of my favorite books. Like, this really is one of my favorite books of all time now. I love it so much. And I'm going to try to briefly explain what it is. If you don't know what this book is, or if you're not familiar with it, I'm going to try to do a quick little explanation of it. Also, some of these books, I apologize in advance. I have not read some of these books literally since January or the beginning of the year. So I'm going to try to do the best synopsis that I can, but it's been a little while since I've read some of these, so I'm a little rusty. But basically this book follows the story of Evelyn Hugo, the title character, and essentially her rise to fame. So the story cuts back and forth between modern times, which I don't know what year it is. I want to say maybe like 2017 or like 2018. I'm not entirely sure, but modern times within the past few years, where Evelyn is in her 80s and she decides that she wants to do a tell-all novel or like memoir type thing. And she has this unknown young journalist named Monique. She has this young journalist named Monique be the one to interview her for this book or sit down interview. I can't remember what exactly it is. And everyone's kind of shocked because Monique is very new to journalism. She's a new writer and she's not like famous at all. So people were surprised that Evelyn Hugo is picking her to be the one to interview her and to write this like memoir, tell-all article, whatever it happens to be. And it turns out that Monique and Evelyn are basically, their lives are intertwined a bit and they're connected in a very unusual kind of crazy way, which you find out about at the end of the book, so I won't spoil it. So it starts there, and that's kind of how we learn about Evelyn's life, is because she's sitting down with Monique telling her all about it. And basically how the story is broken up is it goes through all 7 of Evelyn's marriages. So Evelyn was married 7 times, and it goes through and kind of breaks it up through each one of her marriages, if that makes sense. And it starts off when she's a young girl living and growing up in New York City, and then it goes all the way kind of how she became famous, what she did to get there, all of her marriages, all the different roadblocks she encountered, and then it goes all the way to present day when she is telling us all of this, all these scandalous secrets of her life. So I loved this book. I'm someone who is very fascinated by Hollywood and old Hollywood and acting and all of that stuff, and that's very much what this book covers. So I loved it. I thought it was great. But even if you're not traditionally into the Hollywood scene, I still think this book is definitely worth a read. It's super, super interesting. It's so good. There's a reason why everyone's been talking about it, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Taylor Jenkins Reid is just such a phenomenal author. I actually read one of her other books just recently, which is going to be later in the video, you'll see. She's just such a phenomenal author, and she really writes each one of her characters so beautifully, and you really feel like they're a real person and that you know them. She did this very well in this book and in the other book I read by her, which, like I said, I'll talk about later. But I would highly recommend this book. I would recommend this book literally to anyone, whether you're male, female, young, old, typically a reader, not a reader. Like, I would recommend this book to everyone. It's so, so, so good, and I give it 5 stars, easily 5 stars, hands down. So the next book that I read so far this year, so this book I read in February, and this is not a book that you should read in February. I'm just going to start off by saying that. But this was recommended to me by one of my friends, Marin, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. Okay, so I didn't love this book, and she already knows that, so this is not a shocker. But it is the book Always in December by Emily Stone. So, okay, to start off, this is a romance book. I do not typically read romance. I'm more so into drama books, like coming of age drama, and just like coming of age drama, typically I would say is my favorite genre. I'm not as into romance. I do like romance, but it's not the main genre that I read. So this is the first like straight on romance book I'd read in a while, and this also happens to be a holiday book. And okay, not to sound like a Scrooge, but I'm not the biggest fan of Christmas. I know, crazy. I like Christmas, but I'm not crazy for Christmas like a lot of people are. So I just never really cared to read a holiday book. But my friend recommended this to me. I thought I'd give it a shot. Like I said, it was February, so not the ideal time to read this. Save it for December. Literally, December is in the title. Save it for December. But it's still February, so it's still winter vibes, okay? But anyway, I read this book. I wasn't the biggest fan of it. Let me explain what it's about. So basically this book follows the story of Josie, who is living in London. I believe she's in her late 20s, early 30s. I can't remember, but she's living and working in London. She's at this marketing job that she really doesn't like very much. She's living with one of her best friends that she's lived with for a long time. She really isn't making a ton of money in her job, isn't feeling very fulfilled, and she wants a change. She wants to switch things up a bit. And she also just recently went through a breakup as well. I totally forgot about that. So recently broken up with as well. And like I said, this book takes place in December, so it's around the holiday time. And when Josie was a child, she faced a very tragic loss in her family around the Christmas time. So the holiday season is not a good time for her, and she basically secludes herself from all her family and friends during this time of year because it's just a tough time for her. But one day she is on her bike riding through London, and this is not a spoiler, by the way, it's on the back. She bumps into this man getting out of a taxi, and this man's name is Max. So these two meet in a pretty interesting way. They like quite literally run into each other. And it tells the story of them and kind of how they meet and they spend some time together and kind of their love story. But they keep getting separated from each other. So they meet in London and then they go their separate ways. And then they meet in New York City and go their separate ways. And then they meet in Scotland and go their separate ways. So they keep meeting kind of all throughout the world. And once again, this is not a spoiler. It's all in the back, I promise. But they keep meeting in all these different places. And they're like, oh my God, like, what are you doing here type thing. And it just kind of shares their story and how their love unfolds and kind of how it all ties into Christmas. So, okay. Like I said, I'm not a big Christmas person, but I also just didn't feel very connected to any of the characters. Josie, I didn't feel very connected to. Max, I didn't feel very connected to. I just didn't really care. I just like did not get that into it. Also, I totally forgot about this until a couple minutes ago. I just remembered, but the ending of this book is kind of crazy. It's very comes out of left field. Like, it really catches you off guard. And my friend who read this actually kind of liked the ending and she was very emotional about it. Whereas I was just like, why would the author do that? Like, that's way too random. Like, that's doing way too much. So I won't spoil it, but it was just very like, what the heck? Which may not work well with certain readers. Like, it did not work well with me, but my friend liked it, so it just depends. But would I recommend this book? Honestly, I don't think I would. I think if you want to read a Christmassy romance book, there's better ones out there. Do I know what they are? No, I don't, because I have not read them. But I feel like there's better ones out there. I would not recommend this. And I believe I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars when I first rated it. So that's what I'm going to give it now, 2.5 out of 5 stars. Not horrible, but there's definitely better ones out there. My third book of the year, which I believe I read in March. Typically I read one book a month. Sometimes I speed it up a bit, but I believe I read this one in March. This one is very different for me, quite the switch up from what I normally read. It is Knock 'em Dead, Secrets and Strategies for First-Time Job Seekers. So if you guys don't know, I just graduated from college in December and I'm still job searching. And my dad got me this book a while ago and it was just sitting on my shelf. I didn't want to read it because I don't typically read self-help and it just seemed boring. But back in like March, I had been job searching for a couple months at this point and I just was like, you know what? I should be responsible and I should read this because maybe there's some good advice in there. So finally I decided to read it, and I have to admit there is some pretty good advice in this book also. It's by Martin Yate. I don't think I said who the author is. His name is Martin Yate. But there actually is some pretty good advice in here. As you can see, I did lots of highlighting, which typically I don't highlight books, but I was very highlighter happy with this one. There is some pretty solid career advice in here, especially if you are a first-time job seeker like me. And I believe this book was published in 2013, so it's not brand new, but I feel like the advice still works now. I wouldn't say it's too outdated. So definitely give this a read if you are looking for a job, struggling a bit. I feel like it is helpful, and I did implement some of these strategies into my search, and I feel like it has helped a bit. I'm trying to think like unique things about this book. Oh, one thing I do like about this book that is pretty unique is there is an appendix in the back with the names and contact info of a bunch of business people that worked on this book with the author. And basically all throughout the book, there's these little sections, they're in these gray boxes, where each of the people in the appendix kind of give a piece of advice, and then it gives their name and what company they work for. And like I said, there's a whole list of these people in the back of the book. So if you want to like reach out to them and contact them, you literally can. Like their emails are on here and you can look them up on LinkedIn. So it's actually very, very useful to do this. I think I've actually may have connected with a few of them on LinkedIn, including the author, Martin. So that's a really cool aspect of the book. So would I recommend this? I would say yes. If you're someone who's like me, recent college grad, looking for a job, I think there can be some really helpful info in here and some new strategies that you can implement to your job search. So I would recommend it, and I believe I gave it 5 out of 5 stars because it can be pretty useful. The fourth book I read this year, so similar to Seven Husbands, this book very quickly became one of my favorites. It is Such a Fun Age by Kiley, Reid. So I actually first discovered this book through Kaya Gerber's book club that she does on Instagram. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Kaya Gerber or her book club, but Kaya Gerber is Cindy Crawford's daughter. She's like a model actress, and during the pandemic she started doing a like virtual book club through her Instagram, and each month there'd be a new book and she would do an Instagram live and talk about the book, usually with the author of the book, and if not the author then someone else. And this was actually one of the books that she did for her book club, and she had Kiley, Reid, the author, come on and talk about it, which was really cool. And I remember watching the live and like hearing about the book and hearing both Kaya and Kiley talk about it, and it sounded very intriguing and very fascinating, and it wasn't a book that I'd heard really anything about before, and I still don't really hear anyone talk about this book, which I feel like they should because it's pretty good. So I always knew I wanted to read it, and then I finally just read it a couple of months ago, I think in April. But basically this book follows the story of Amira, who is 25 years old and is a college graduate, and she is turning 26 soon. And when you're 26, you get basically kicked off your parents' healthcare. You can't be on your parents' healthcare once you turn 26. And the current job she has doesn't provide healthcare because she's working as a personal nanny for this woman named Alex Chamberlain, who's the other main character. And basically Amira is the personal nanny to Alex's daughter, Briar, who is 2 or 3, I believe. I think she's 3. And basically right at the beginning of the book, there's this big event that happens, which this isn't a spoiler, it's on the back. But basically, Amira is called to Alex's house late in the evening because there's this incident that happens and Alex just wants Briar out of the house for a little bit. So Amira comes from a birthday party because she didn't know she would have to go to the Chamberlain's house. So she leaves a friend's birthday parties at like midnight to go get Briar and to, you know, take her out of the house for a bit so Alex and her husband can deal with this situation that's going on. And because it's so late, the only thing that's open is this grocery store down the street. By the way, this takes place in urban, like, Philadelphia, by the way, is the setting. So there's this grocery store, like, bodega open down the street. So Amira takes Briar to the grocery store to get her out of the house and entertain her for a bit. And Amira is a young black woman, and Briar is, you know, a young white child. And the security officer at the grocery store essentially accuses Amira of kidnapping Briar. And this whole thing goes down. There's someone in the store that films the whole incident as well. And basically it gets on national news and it becomes this huge story. Or eventually becomes a huge story. Anyway, so this incident happens and basically the book kind of goes through and shares kind of Amira's thoughts on this situation and how she handles it, as well as Alex's thoughts on the situation, how she handles it. And it also dives into the women's relationship with each other and how they're both very fascinated with one another and kind of the complications and the complexities of their relationship and this transactional relationship that they have. And it's just very interesting, and it dives into some really important topics involving race and class, transactional relationships, and just society, gender norms, lots of different things. So this book I just thought was very interesting, and similar to Seven Husbands, there's another character in this book that ties together Amira and Alex in an unexpected way. So it has that same vibe as Seven Husbands. But I thought this book was great. I would describe this book as just like a modern day drama, I would say, is the best way to describe this book. I thought it was really great. Like I said, touched on some really important topics, but this book, even though it touched on like kind of more serious topics, it was still really funny. Like this book was funny, it had a lot of comedy in it, and it still felt like a light read, even though it dealt with some pretty serious stuff. So that's the one thing I liked about it, is I didn't feel super heavy when I was reading this book. Like I was learning a lot, I was understanding what was going on, but not in a heavy, sad way. Like the author Kiley did a really great job portraying this all in a very light, kind of breezy way, which I really, really liked. So I loved this book. I would recommend this book for sure. I would recommend this book, once again, pretty much to anyone. I just think there's a lot of really interesting complexities in this book, and there's just a lot of stuff in this book that I hadn't read about prior, and just some really important things that do happen in society that are touched on in this book, and I think is important to stay aware of. So I would definitely recommend this book. I give it 5 out of 5 stars. I love Kiley Reid. This book was so, so good, and I give it 5 stars and would definitely recommend it. Next up, I think we're on number 5, I want to say. But the next book I read, this book disappoints me. Oh my gosh, this book was so disappointing. I'm sorry to the author, but it is Reign, American Royals 4, which is a part of the American Royals series. So if you guys aren't familiar, there's this book series called American Royals by Katharine McGee. I started reading this series, I believe in 2020 when the pandemic started. And I absolutely loved the first book, loved the first book. This is the 4th and final book. I was very disappointed by it. But basically, if you're not familiar with this series, this is another one I'm not hearing a lot of people talk about, which is surprising because I think it's an interesting concept. But once again, I think the later books are not as good, so maybe that's why people aren't talking about it as much. But basically, the first book and the premise of this whole series is basically it centers around the fact or the idea that the United States, instead of having a democracy and a president, we actually have a royal family, and we have a king or a queen in charge. And basically it is, if George Washington, who of course is our first president, it's about if he was king instead of president. So essentially George Washington, it's about him and kind of his lineage, and then it focuses on the current day Washington family, who are the monarchy in the United States. But it's like a young adult read, and it's fun, and it's like drama and romance and all that stuff. So, but that's the main idea. And there's Beatrice, who is the oldest sibling, and then there's Samantha and Jefferson, who are twins, and they're, the heir and the spare situation. And it's just really interesting, and I just thought it was such a fun read. There's also some other really fun characters in this book. There's Daphne, who is Jefferson's girlfriend, who is a troublemaker, and then there's Nina, who is Sam's best friend, and she kind of is in a little bit of a love triangle with, like, Daphne and Jefferson, and there's a bunch of other side characters. It was really fun. The first book was a fun, easy, breezy read, but this is book number 4. And I won't get into everything that happens in the series because I just want to focus on this book. But essentially this book, it concludes the series. I'm like literally blanking on what even happened in this book specifically just because I did not like it very much. But, and I don't want to really get too much into it because then I would be spoiling the books before it. But basically this is ending the series. And, okay, I won't get super, because I don't know how to spoil. I feel like I'd spoil the entire series if I talk about what's in this book, essentially. But I'll just say I didn't love the ending to this book. I think it could have been done better. I also think that the third book could have been the final book. I don't even think this book was necessary. Although I was really excited when I found out this book was coming because I thought it would be just fun. Like, I love this series. I thought it'd be another fun book to read, but I don't think it was done in the best way. And I just think it dragged on some plot lines that didn't need to be dragged on. So I would not recommend this book. I would recommend the first book, maybe even the second book. I would not recommend this one. I would say you don't need to read the entire series, even just read like the first book. Because I thought the first book was super fun and an interesting concept, but I think this one just didn't end in the best way. And like I said, I don't really know how to talk about this one without like spoiling the whole series. Like I said, I did that quick synopsis of the first book, and like I said, I don't even fully remember what happened in this one, if I'm being honest, because I just didn't like it very much. But so I would not recommend this book. Even if you read the series, the earlier books, I still would not recommend this one. I just think you're gonna be disappointed. And I think I gave it like 2 or 3 out of 5 stars. I'm going to say, like, I'll give it 3 out of 5 stars because I love the series so much. But, yeah, I'm going to give it 3 out of 5 stars. Okay, we are chugging right along on to the next one. This one is another one similar to the job search book that I would not typically read this type of book. It's another self-help. But it was sitting on my shelf. My dad also got me this one, too. And I just thought it could be helpful. It's also very short. But this book is called How to Make Small Talk. Always know just what to say in every and any situation. So this is by Melissa Wadsworth, by the way, is the name of the author. But this one, so this one's kind of a funny one. This one, to me, I felt very unserious when I was reading this book, but maybe I should have been more serious about it because it probably could help me. But basically this book is literally just about how to make small talk. Like, it's right in the title. It is about kind of grasping the art of talking to people and how to get over social anxiety and just problems talking to people. So I am more of a shy person. I'm not a social butterfly. I mean, I like doing things socially. I like going out. I have friends, yada yada, but I'm not a talker really. Like, obviously I literally, as I'm talking to a camera, but I'm not the chattiest person ever. It's not something that comes super natural to me, and I also have social anxiety, so it's just something I've always kind of struggled with my whole life, and that I'm not super natural with, like, conversing with other people. So my dad is the same exact way. So he got me this book because he gets it. And he got me this book, and I just thought I would read it. As you can see, I have a lot of like little post-its in here because there's some exercises in here that you can do to help sharpen and practice your social skills. And it has a lot of different chapters. There's like a chapter for how to do this in like a dating setting, how to do this when you're talking to colleagues at work, talking to your neighbors. Like, it really breaks down how to small talk with all types of people. And I feel like for some people this book seems useless and very self-explanatory. Like, if you're someone like my mom, for instance, who is just naturally so good at talking to people and connecting with people, this book probably seems useless. But to someone like me and my dad and, more quiet people, this book can definitely be useful in helping to give you more confidence when it comes to conversing with others in really any setting. So would I recommend this? I would say yes, if you're someone who wants to sharpen your, not even social skills, but just, and not even communication skills, but just like conversation skills, I guess is the best way to put it. If you're someone who wants to sharpen those types of skills, I would say give it a shot. It's also not very long. I think it's literally like less than 200 pages. It's a quick one. And I would say it doesn't hurt. Like there's some good pointers in here. And I think I gave this 5 out of 5 stars, or maybe 4 out of 5. It definitely can seem kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Awkward at times and kind of or just like cheesy at times. But I do think there's some nice little pieces of information sprinkled in here. So I'd give it 4 out of 5 stars, and I'd recommend it to someone who just wants to sharpen their conversation skills a bit more. The next book that I read, this is another romance book, so a little different for me. Like I said, I don't typically read romance, but we got another romance book here. This is Half Blown Rose by Leesa Cross-Smith. So this is a book I did not hear anyone talking about. I still haven't really heard anyone talk about this book. I just happened to be in Barnes & Noble one day. I think this was over Christmas break last year, and I saw this on the shelf. I thought the cover was pretty. I very am much someone who judges a book by the cover, not the greatest, but I do that. So I thought the cover was pretty, and then I read the back and thought it seemed interesting, so I picked it up. But this, like I said, is a romance book, but it has such cool vibes. Like the vibe of this book is just chef's kiss. But basically this follows along to the story of Vincent, who is a 44-year-old woman from the United States. She's American, and she essentially is going through a tough time with her husband right now. She's having some marital issues, so she ends up moving to Paris for a bit because she comes from a wealthy family of artists, and her parents have a place in Paris that they can stay at whenever. So Vincent basically jets off to Paris just to get away from her husband and her life for a bit, because there's this kind of shocking revelation that happens, and she's just having a lot of marital issues. So she jets off to Paris for a bit. When she's in Paris, she meets this, I believe he's 23-year-old man named Lou. And they meet, they have some mutual friends, and they essentially start a relationship. And I don't know how much, okay, I don't want to spoil anything, but essentially she starts this relationship with this young man named Lou, who's basically half her age. And it gets into their relationship, and this all takes place in Paris, which is a beautiful setting and just very much just romantic and whimsical setting. I don't know if anyone watching this video studied abroad, but this brought me back to my study abroad days. I didn't even study abroad in Paris. I studied abroad in London, but I went to Paris, and this just brought back so many abroad memories that I had, and it just makes me miss Europe. Like, just the vibe of this book is great. Like, the story is interesting, but the vibe, I feel like read this book for the vibes. Like, it's just, the setting is just gorgeous. But, so yes, it follows along to her relationship with this young man that she meets in Paris, and then kind of her dealing with the family drama, the marital drama she has with her husband, and all that. So I don't really want to say anything else, because I feel like I'll be giving it away. Because I feel like this book, there's some big things that happen, but it's kind of at a slow pace. So that's why I feel like I can't say anything else without spoiling it. So I hope that was convincing. But I really like this book. Like I said, the vibes were just absolutely gorgeous. I think that's just the best word to describe this book, is gorgeous, and just very whimsical and beautiful and amazing and just very like abroad European. It's chef's kiss again. Like, it's just great. So would I recommend this book? I would say yes. I think if you're someone who wants to get into a romance book, and you also love just like travel vibes and just those types of vibes, like European travel vibes, abroad vibes, and you also want to have a very like interesting, complex romance book, I would say definitely read this. And I think I gave it 4 or 4.5 out of 5. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 and not 5, because it was a little slow for me. Like I said, this is one of those books where there's a few big things that happen, but like for most of the book it's kind of slow. Besides those like big things, those big bombs that are dropped, like maybe at the beginning and end of the book. So that's why I put it at 4, because it was a little bit slow for me. But I do love this book. I love the vibes of it, and I definitely would recommend it. We're on our second, I just revealed it. We're on our second to last book. This video is also 30 minutes long. I'm gonna have to cut it down a bit. But the next book is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is the other Taylor Jenkins Reid book that I mentioned at the beginning. Also, there's a bookmark in here because my mom is currently reading this. I'm like forcing her to read it because it's so good. But yes, this is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I read this book last month in July, which is the perfect time to read this book. This is such a summer book. I feel like you have to read this book in the summer and in the summer only. Like, it's a summer book. Like, that's it. Like, it's a summer book. You can't read it in the winter. It's summer, okay? Summer book. But basically, this book follows along with the Riva family. There are 4 siblings, Nina, Hud, Jay, and Kit. They are 4 siblings. And actually, which this is not a spoiler, but their father is actually one of Evelyn Hugo's 7 husbands, which is interesting, but this is his family from his first marriage. So it follows along to these 4 siblings. And once again, I don't know how much to say about this without spoiling it, but it follows along to their life. And so because their father is a famous individual, there's a lot of, like, people think that their life is a certain way and that their life's amazing because they're famous and rich, but it's actually, their lives actually are very different than what they appear to be to the public. And it just dives into the upbringing of these 4 siblings and their relationship with their father, their relationship with their mother, and just... It's just like the epitome of a family drama. It really is. But this book in a lot of ways is very heartbreaking. Like, there were so many moments when I was reading this book where I just wanted to give all these characters a hug. Like I said before, Taylor Jenkins Reid does such a great job personifying these characters and making them seem like real people that you know in real life. So I just wanted to give a hug to these 4 characters so badly. They just went through so much, which if you read this book, you will find out about. But it's about their upbringing and how it's very different from what society believes it to be. And they're also from Malibu. So this all takes place in Malibu. And the descriptions of Malibu are just absolutely stunning, gorgeous. That's why you really have to read this in the summertime, because it takes place in Malibu, California, which is such a summery place. And just the descriptions are just gorgeous. And like I said, that's why you got to read it in the summer. I don't really know what else to... Oh, okay. I guess I'll say this too. But basically, every year, Nina, the oldest Riva sibling, she throws this huge party at her house in Malibu. And it also kind of goes on... It kind of shares, like, what happens at the party this year. This takes place in 1983. So this is not modern day. But yes, it goes through the timeline of their life, kind of their upbringing, their parents' upbringing, and then it comes to modern day 1983 when this party is happening. So I don't really want to give too much away, like I said, but this book is heartbreaking, but it's great. This book is good. I did like 7 Husbands better than this one, but this one, if you want a family drama, this is really good. I don't think I'd read family dramas before, but not like this. Like, this is such a good family drama, and it's Taylor Jenkins Reid, so of course it's going to be good. This is just a good book. I don't like I said, I don't really want to spoil it much more, but this is just a really good book. It's going to get you, like, there were so many moments when I read this book where I was, like, genuinely, like, angry and, like, pissed off, or I was sad, I was happy. Like, this book made me feel such strong emotions. I feel like emotions I hadn't felt this strongly since I read, like, It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, or I guess 7 Husbands. So this is good. Just read this book. Like, would I recommend this? Yes, just read it, okay? And read it in the summer. It's August, so hurry up and read this book or save it for next year, because it's good. I don't even know what else to say about it. It's just good. Okay, last but not least, we have the latest book I read, which I just finished a couple of days ago, but it is Come and Get It by Kiley Reid, which is the same author of Such a Fun Age. So because I loved Such a Fun Age so much, I really wanted to read another book by Kiley, and she actually just released this one a couple of months ago. So Such a Fun Age was her first book, and now she has this one. So I decided I really wanted to read this one because I loved Such a Fun Age so much. And okay, I liked this book, didn't love it. So basically this follows along to the story of Millie Cousins, who is an RA at the University of Arkansas in 2017. And it follows along to her and her experience being an RA in this dorm building at the University of Arkansas. And then there is this visiting professor named Agatha Paul that comes into the picture, and she is a writer, and she starts off by writing a piece about weddings. So she goes to Millie's dorm building and sees if she can interview a few students, which she does, and that's how she meets Millie, because Millie has some of her residents do this interview with Agatha. And then Agatha basically just ends up becoming really intrigued by all of these students and wants to write more about them, and basically she enlists Millie to help her kind of find out more about these students and write more about them. I don't want to say anything else because I think it would be a spoiler. But basically, it's about how Agatha and Millie, kind of their relationship with each other, how they're like finding out a lot about the residents in this dorm building and the lives of these residents, and it's very interesting. There also is another main character named Kennedy, who is one of Millie's residents. She's a transfer student at the University of Arkansas. This is her first semester there. And it's about her experience being a transfer student, how she's feeling really lonely, and we get to hear her backstory as to why she transferred to Arkansas and kind of why she is the way she is, which is really interesting. Like I said, I don't want to give away too much because there isn't really much to go off of in the description, so I don't want to say anything else. But this book is really interesting. If you're someone who went to college, especially if you're a female who went to college and lived in a dorm, I think you will appreciate this book. Because this book, I feel like Kiley did a great job being very accurate in describing the circumstances in this book and portraying serious topics in a light way. Because this book definitely can get heavy at times, but Kiley just does a great job portraying it in a light way. And I think one of the ways in which she does this is how she describes dorm life. And like I said, if you have lived in a dorm before, especially if you're a female, this book is very accurate in portraying that, and just how random people come together and live together, and it's these 18, 19-year-old kids, we're living away from home for the first time, we're just randomly put with people to live with, and our relationship with the RAs, it's just very accurate to, I feel like, how dorm life truly is, especially if you're a female. So I would definitely recommend this book if you are a recent college student or just anyone who's been to college. I think you'll appreciate that aspect of this book. However, I will say this book definitely is a little bit slow, kind of similar to how Half Blown Rose was. This book's a little bit slow. There's one big dramatic event that happens towards the end, and then there's some other little shocking things we find out throughout. But for the most part, it's a little bit on the slower side. So if you're someone who likes fast-paced, crazy drama, almost thriller-like drama, I would not recommend this. But if you're someone who likes coming-of-age stories and likes stories that seem realistic to things that could happen in real life, then I would recommend this. And I believe I gave this book 3.5 or 4 out of 5 stars. I think I gave it 4 because honestly, for the first 200 pages, I was a little bored, which I know seems and this book is only 380 something pages, I think. So that's a long way to go without really loving the book. But once I got to that 200 mark, I really started to be intrigued and I really couldn't put it down. So that's why I ended up giving it 4 out of 5, because once I got over that initial hump, I ended up really liking it, or could not set it down, literally could not set it down. So yeah, so I would recommend this too if you like realistic stuff. If you like thrillers, don't read this, you'll be bored. That is it. Those are all the books that I have read so far this year. I tried my best to explain them. Like I said, some of these books I have not read since January, February, so I hope I did a decent job explaining them. I hope you maybe got some book recs out of this video, or not some book recs, and now you know books you don't want to read maybe. But I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for listening to me yap about books this is now 39 minutes, but I don't think it'll be 39 minutes when I post it because that's way too long. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned for more videos to come. Bye!